Hello, and thanks for joining us for the latest episode of the live series from Future of Marketing. Tonight we're talking about Imposter Syndrome, and it's been our most popular event yet since we launched in June 2021 with over 400 people registered for this now. That in itself is pretty reassuring for anybody who's sitting there thinking that they have imposter syndrome and they're the only people that do. So there's obviously lots of other people for whom this is relevant as well. So sometimes it's knowing that other people are feeling the same way you are that can help you feel a little bit better about it. So it's almost 5 years since we started Blue Sky Video Marketing, and I know one of the big things for me whenever I started was the Ulster Bank Accelerator program that we did, and that was less about the coaching and mentoring that we did as part of the program, although that was great, just in case John Ferris or Matt Teague happens to be watching, but more about surrounding ourselves with people who decided to make the same decision that we had and start their own business and suffered the same sort of anxieties and doubts about whether it was the right thing to do. So when we were looking for a guest for tonight's episode, we wanted someone who not only had a good story to tell, but also who was going to be prepared to share it in a forum like this with a virtual room full of strangers. So it didn't take us long to realise after we did a bit of digging that Marcus Hunter Neill was the ideal person to have on this, and thankfully he agreed to come on board. So we're going to talk about Marcus's personal experiences from his school days right up to what he's currently doing, and how he overcame that very often crippling feeling of imposter syndrome that can paralyse you. So thanks for joining us tonight, Marcus. It's great. It's great to have you here.
It's great.
If we could start off, then could you introduce yourself to the audience for us and just tell us a little bit about what it is you do?
So, hello everybody. My name is Marcus Hunter Neill, the most beautiful face in Northern Ireland, never to be discovered. And a lot of my work that I do now is I work globally in leadership and personal development. And a lot of that is geared around strategy building for how do you get from A to B. For example, like some people will say, oh, I want to win the lottery. And then do you buy a lottery ticket? No, I don't. So basically it is who do you kind of need to be, or who does your team need to be, and what do they need to become to get the end goal? So most of the work that I do is end goal based, and it's getting people from where they're at to where they need to go. And sometimes it's really easy and simple things, but that's mostly what I do. And I work in vibrational work as well. So I do guided meditations to get people's energy levels up so that they're operating on an amazing stream.
Okay, we'll touch on that a little bit more later, but if we can go right back to the start of the story, I suppose, Marcus, if you can tell us a little bit about your school experience and when your time in education finished.
So I was very lucky in my formative years I attended Rudolf Steiner, if you've ever heard of that school. Yeah, so it's a very creative school where they try to teach you around expanding your mind before they cram in academia. I had dyslexia, so I actually find it very difficult to read, write and spell still to this day, but thankfully I can talk. And then I went to a regular primary school, where every day they instilled in us for the last couple of years. So Alison Murphy and Irene Laurie thought that just would tell us that we were the best thing. You know, there was nothing better than us, and anything that we wanted to do, we could achieve, which was amazing because it gave me the grounding for then my secondary education was horrific. Okay. So basically the 5 years, once I left them, and they actually got me into my first play in school because they could see this shining star, and they were like, you'd be great. And I said that I didn't want to audition because then I wouldn't be able to read the lines. And she said, well, we'll make your lines your homework. Okay. Right. So then I got there, and I got in, and I was a part of the Joseph. And then I went to secondary school, and it was absolutely horrific. It was most
horrific is a big word to use.
It was the most brutal experience of my life for five solid years, because nothing prepared me for what I was going into. Everything in my life up until that point had been really pleasant and really calm, and everybody had been very open to everybody else. And then I went into this school where basically, you know, short of a better word, it was kind of like a breeding ground for the worst members of society. But because I had dyslexia, the dyslexic unit was in this school, and it became a behavioural class, and then it became a bit of a behavioural school. So if you were expelled from other schools, you ended up in this, and so it was a jungle, and they had never experienced anybody like me. I had never, like, I can remember walking in on the first day and a child my age smoking and swearing. I didn't think that children, it blew my mind that children swore. So I understand now as an adult why I was a target for the children, because
it's different, isn't it?
They would never have seen anything like me, and I'd never seen anything like them. And for 5 straight years, I was spat on daily, beaten, head flushed down toilets, it was just like the done thing. And I got through it, thankfully, and I got out the other side.
Can you tell? I mean, talk to us a little bit. It's a pretty obvious question, I suppose, but how did that make you feel, and did it have a lasting impact on you then?
Yes. So of course, because obviously I'm in my formative years. Not that I ever wanted to kill myself, but there was periods of time where it was so horrific, and I never told anybody, because I knew it was because I was gay, and I would be called fruity boy and all this type of thing, and I never went home and vocalized this to my parents, because I felt if I tell them what's going on, then I have to come out, and they'll know then that I'm gay. So I never told anybody. And then one time I had my head flushed down the toilet, and I don't know if you've ever had your head flushed in the toilet. It's not a great experience. But what happened was I am standing in the cubicle, and the door is kicked open. So I hear this huge bang, and within seconds, my face is in my own urine in the toilet, and it's being flushed. My trousers are around my ankles. So there's all of these things going through my head. And for the 10, 15 seconds while the toilet's flushing, I thought, I think I'm going to die, because I couldn't breathe. I'd no air. And every time my head would pull up, I would hear myself screaming, and it was like that real primal scream. And a teacher came in and heard this, and I was like, what is going on? And I was like, basically explain what happened. And days later, my parents, I saw them pull up into the school, and what had happened was, and I thought it was very odd. Now, you have to understand, I was in a school where everybody had behavioural problems, right? And I never saw their parents come up ever. Like their parents never came up. I got home that night to my parents asking me, why was I making so much trouble for myself? So the teacher had seen this such serious incident, and rather than address it, they put the blame on me, and thinking that I would be going home and telling my parents what was going on, and to cover their own backs, they pulled them up and put it onto me. So I none of that time I blame children at all, mm-hmm. because children don't know any better, mm-hmm. and my parents feel awful about the whole thing. But they didn't know. If they had one inkling of what was going on, I wouldn't have been in the school. But I never told anybody. But I lay all the blame on the staff, because they knew exactly what was going on, and they would turn blind eyes or egg people on.
I don't think there's anybody who's a parent or who's been through school would argue with the fact that school playgrounds can be pretty unforgiving places. From what you've seen, do you think we're doing any better now in terms of how we're educating people and how we're dealing with situations like
100%, because what happened to me then would never happen in today's age. So I work as an ambassador for Childline and NSPCC, and they use me on both guises, both as myself and in drag as well, because they want the visibility of, not everybody is the same. And I've gone around schools where they have like anti-bullying clubs. So whereas years ago the bullies were cool, now they're not cool. A bit like smoking, like everybody smoked and they were so cool, and then now if you smoke indoors, everyone's like, what are you doing? So they've the pendulum has switched to the other way. So that's a wonderful thing, and it's great saying that.
Okay, and then could you tell us then, going on, when did you finish education then?
Well, P7. I literally learned nothing those 5 years. Okay. I can order milk in French. That's about it. Okay. So then I left there, and my careers teacher, this is one of the things that would love people to understand about imposter syndrome is a lot of it sometimes has got nothing to do with you, but it's also what other people's limited thoughts and beliefs. So we have like historical within our own generational families will go, don't be doing this, don't be doing that, or have a fear of these people, have a fear of those people, or don't be going there, don't be doing that. Whereas if you were left to your own devices, you probably would find out your own way. And there's no problem in going left or right or forward or back. You know, a lot of families will tend to go, we don't like these people, so we don't you to like these people. So whenever it came to my my careers, we went round the class, and their careers teacher asked, you know, everybody what they wanted to do. And as you can imagine, people weren't really reaching for the stars. Somebody wanted to be a cleaner. Some people wanted to get pregnant to get an apartment. And some people wanted to be, one person wanted to be a drug dealer. So
this is an interesting one for me. Can you, because we talked about this, can you tell me and tell our audience how the careers teacher reacted to that one?
Yeah. So he spoke to this child who wanted to be a drug dealer. And said to him, like, where are you going to get the money for all of this? And he had worked it all out in his head that, you know, he would get the money for the drugs from a double week from benefits, and say that he lost them and crisis loans and all this, and he'd have enough money to buy his first batch and buy his first round of stock and then sell it and then get the money back. So that's great. The careers teacher then did say, well, that shows me that you have got a wonderful business brain, and would you not be better putting that into, you know, something legal? And he goes, well, no, because then you'd have to leave the house. So in saying all of that, and then coming to me, and I said, well, I don't know. I either want to be an actor, a teacher, an interior decorator, or a TV presenter. I'm not sure. And literally, he flew back in his seat, and he laughed, and he was this big fat fella, and his hands were, and he was like, right? Now, this wee fella next to me had just said he wanted to be a drug dealer, but I got the like, what are you talking about? Whereas, again, if you saw a child like that in a room full of people who, you know, we don't know what we want, or we don't want to do anything, and you've got one person going, I have 5 ideas of what I would like to do. No, you're the odd one out. So that just fed into like, well, maybe I am. Maybe there's something wrong with me. But in the back of my head is going, well, why couldn't I do this? You know, like why couldn't I do these things? And he said, you have to tell me what you want to do. And I was kind of going, well, that was it. That's what I can't think of giving you 5. Like, they haven't even given you anything. I'm giving you 5. Yeah. So I ended up going and working in special needs, which I totally loved, and it was great. My mum worked in a special needs daycare centre. I went on to work in a special needs primary school, and it was great, and I was doing childcare and education until the principal over the summer scheme found out that I was gay, and she wouldn't let me back into the school because you're going back now 25 years. So and again, people in Northern Ireland had this perception, and certain people had this perception that, you know, if you were gay, you must have been a paedophile. So why would somebody like me want to work with vulnerable children, a gay person? So she put me out of the school completely, never to be seen there again. But thankfully, in that same summer, I did a performing arts course in London. So I finished off my my childcare education course, which was directly opposite. So out there, that building that has the mural on the side, that used to be called Young Help, and that's where I did my training. Okay. And then I moved from that, and I went into performing arts, and there was no performing drag queens or drag queens again. This is going back now 23 years. There was no performing drag queens. There was no Titty did the door, like just did stuff on the door, and there was no kind of like shows. And we had seen these shows because obviously I was in performing arts, and somebody else was doing my other friend was doing something else artsy, and he was doing fashion. And we came together and we went to a bar and was like, could we do a show? And this is how funny, because all this time ago, they went like, men dressed as women, like, what, is that a thing? Like, would that be? And we're like, well, it works down south, could we? And our shows were on cassette tape. Yeah. So you had to like wind up the cassette tape and everything with pencil. So that's how long, so that gave me a great grounding, as well as in like, you know, just rolling with life, and whatever comes along, you know? Okay.
Can you tell us then about how the opportunity to join the BBC came about, and
yes.
What happened there?
So for a year, I had worked in community radio and everything like that, and I would send demos and I'd send that. But on paper, physically on paper, I have no formal qualifications, right? Because I don't, the performing arts course, the academic work just kept falling by the wayside, and I was very artsy, and I just like, whatever. And then the childcare and education one, I have that somewhere, but I don't even, that was 25 years ago, so it probably doesn't even exist anymore. So if I was to send that in, I wouldn't have, they just looked at my CV and thought that's laugh. So I'd have sent in demos and things like that. And I was working I was the face of this nightclub in Dublin, which closed down overnight, again, around sexuality and identity, because the company was bought by this big conglomerate, and they had like 12 different premises. One happened to be a gay bar. It was bought by a company from the Far East, and because, gay, they're very anti-gay, they couldn't have this on their books, so they basically bought the job lot and closed the bar that I was working in, lock, stock and barrel, and then reopened it straight so that it was off their books. And I had heard that there was a course, one of my friends had done this many years ago, called CSV, where if you were on government assistant on benefits, that you could go this. And I thought, well, I'm now technically, I can sign on. So I went in to the benefits office. No shade to the fella sitting behind it, but I always feel in certain scenarios I could probably do a much better job if he ever sitting in front of me. So this fella was sitting in front of me. I don't think his hair had seen a comb in about a week. I don't think it had seen water in about a month, and half of his dinner was down the front of his thing, and he was trying to ask me what I wanted to do with my life, and I was like, first of all, I'd like to get you sorted. Is there anything, So I had said to him about this course, and he was going, oh, like, you have to be unemployed like a certain period of time and everything like that. And he had never heard of the course. And I said, I definitely think it still exists. So he went and spoke to somebody else. They came over, and I ended up having to go on this scheme where it was like steps 1, 2, and 3, and 3 was CSV. Step 1 was kind of like this 5-day event where you had to, first of all, it was very odd because the lady said, hands up to anyone who volunteered to be here. I thought that's a very odd question. So I went to put my hand up and realised that I was the only one. So I just kind of like scratched my ear and was like, oh, okay, everyone's here because they're made to be here. And that's where there's so many holes in the system that we are, because there was one guy on that course, and he was 26, and his only CV was the jobs that he was made to do to keep his benefits. So every 6 months or every 18 months, he had to work for 6 months and do something else. So that was his only work experience from he had left school. But the guy was great, and he had a wonderful personality, and his CV was desperate because it was only like 6 months here and 6 months there and 6 months there. And I was like, why don't you tweak it a little bit? Why don't you just kind of like, you've done this and you've done that and you've done the other, and some was catering and and I said, why don't you word it in a way that, vast catering experience and has worked with the public and, and has a love for this and a love for that. And the woman that was taking the course, a bit like Pauline's Pens. Did you ever see that? No. in League of Gentlemen? So she was like anyway, she was a bit like that. And she didn't like the fact that I was actually coming in and I was like almost benefiting them. So she thought this CV was horrific because, he was setting himself up for a fall because it was far too good. And, then we sort of kept coming to us like, are you sure that's like the avenue that you want to go down here? And I didn't have to do step 2. They just fast-tracked me straight to step 3, which was great. So I got onto CSV and I got into the BBC. So first of all, the audition thing was a big open audition to actually get on the course. And what I had done was I knew a couple of people who had worked there, and I said, look, what is the criteria to get, like, what are they actually looking for? Because it was government assisted, I didn't think they cared what your education level was, but I knew that they'd be looking for something. So basically it was around this, like, how you sell yourself for a minute. And I was like, right, if I nail that. So I nailed how, because it's very difficult, and I challenge anybody to go away with a stop clock and sell themselves exactly for 1 minute, not over or under, because if you, the thing was, if you were over, It was silence.
Goes, yeah.
If you were under, there was silence, and it was over, you were just stopped, even if you were.
I mentioned the Ulsterbank Accelerator actually, and one of the first things that they got us to do as part of that was we spent the first 3 months in that, just doing our 60-second pitch, and you were told to write it from day one. And every time they had the group back together, John Ferris used to stand at the top of the room, and he would just point and go, you, and you up. 60 seconds, and if you were over, it was like stop, sit down. And it's really hard.
And there was this, I remember this one girl in particular, and she had a degree in journalism and a master's in media studies or something like this here. And it was like sort of open forum, and everyone was introducing themselves, and that's exactly what she led with. So she led exactly with, I've got this, I've got that, I've got that. So she obviously was saying, I've got this in the bag, right? And I'm kind of going, well, I don't really have anything apart from like me. Although I did dress to impress. So when you don't have the skill set that I have around, academia, I have to use a very different skill set. So I use what is at my capability. I've got my style. I've got a personality. I know how to work with people, and I know how to get the best out of every scenario that I'm in. So I walk into a room and I can assess who is the one actually you need to impress or who's not. Because sometimes you can go into a boardroom and you're trying to chat to people, and all the wee clackers at one end are just trying to show off to the other end who's not really making that much noise, but they're actually the one that you need to get on board. And especially whenever you're trying to sell new products and things like that, there is someone that holds the purse strings. So I arrived down to the open audition. Open audition. It wasn't an open audition. That's how I was treating it. It was an open interview. And your woman's doing her whole, I've got this, I've got that, I've got the other. And everybody was journalists, and I was going, I really don't have anything like this. And it was in a big semicircle, and I was at the back of the bottom of the U, directly under a ticking clock. And the ticking clock was one of those old-fashioned tick, 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 right? And she happened to be at the far end of the U, and she was first, right? She was in this black blouse, like a V-necked black blouse, and she had dark hair and quite Irishy skin. And he said, speak for a minute and over or under. And she was like, my name is blah, blah, blah. And she led on what she had qualification-wise, and then she stopped because she didn't have anything. That was it. She put her entire substance on her 2 qualifications and nothing else. So then she hemmed and hawed, and she got these big red like welt blotches going right up her entire thing, and she just completely crumbled. Because it's all well and good to have education, but if you don't have anything to, like a bit of street smart to back that up, then and a lot of places nowadays, they don't care about your qualification. They care, can you do a job? Can you deliver what we're asking? Can you bring us in new customers, or can you grow the sector that you're actually in? That's really all people care. A degree is great if you're becoming a brain surgeon or a doctor or something technical where you need to know the science behind something. Other degrees are fine just because it shows that you can listen, follow instructions, and deliver on it. So that's really, when you break them all down, that's what most degrees are around. Yep. So it came to me, and I had my 1 minute, and I was like chit chat, and I was like, probably I said, I'm probably going to be under, but you'll be able to sit and digest just everything that I said. And just by chance I hit the 1 minute, so I got in on that course. I got in on that. Okay. And then I always thought in my head, if they could just see me, I'll not be able to get in on my CV, I'll not be able to get in on anything else. If I get in there and they see me, and they did, and I went in there and I was dressed to impress, and I looked like little Lord Fauntleroy, I'd wear cravats, and because that's just how I dressed anyway. I didn't change I didn't at any point. This is such a key takeaway for this as well, is I never changed who I was to fit the company that I was going into, or the mold that I was going into, because that's only acting.
And that's an interesting one for me. We were talking last week. I mentioned the TED talk that I'd seen from America Ferrera, who was Ugly Betty, and then is in the Superstore series on Netflix. And what she was saying, what she realized eventually, after going for all the roles and not getting them, was that she was complaining about the system, but she was trying to conform to the system at the same time. And she says it's entirely possible to wish that the system would change, but be contributing to the fact that it won't.
Yeah.
Because you just try and turn yourself into what the system expects you to be, if you like. You didn't do that.
No.
Okay, so that must have that probably makes the journey a little bit harder, I would assume.
Not for me, because I can't be anything other than myself, which is good and bad. So I can't really. I think for years, even going through everything that I went through at school, it has just made me be just, there's only be yourself. And again, I don't try to fit into a mold, because that then eventually you're going to run out of steam, and if you're continuously acting about something, then I'm not going to be able to fulfill this. Okay. And so if you either take me as I am or don't, and that's a great thing that I've learned over the years, is you'll find your eventual rhythm, and people will find your rhythm with you. Whereas if all of a sudden you go in as one thing and then you start to change, they go, well, he's changed or she's changed.
I'm interested to know, because you described your school experience as horrific. Yeah. Okay, and from how you're talking now about how things progressed after that, it appears that you shrugged off quite a lot of those doubts that were there because of, as you said, the way other people were reacting to you. So did you manage to get rid of them entirely, or was that? So
back in those days, and I would be looking at the kids who were like spitting on me, and I was like, how, like in my own head, like, how effing dare you, and who do you think you are doing this to me, type thing, and I'll show them, because like I know at that age I knew. I was going, I'm destined for bigger and better things, and unfortunately you're not. This is going to be it for you, and I used to go, well, I feel so sorry for you, because this is all you have right now. I just need out these doors and on my own, and I will thrive. Okay. And that was part of the thing. That was part of my mantra. Once I get out of here, I will be able to do my own thing. I don't know what that thing is, but I know that there's more to it than what I'm doing here.
I mean, you've obviously you talked a little bit about joining the BBC, and you produced programs. Is that right? Could you talk us a little bit about some of the work you were doing there when you got in?
So I'll keep this very, very brief, because I didn't. Because I didn't try to blend into everybody else and be what everybody, and I wore cravats and I had my personality and I am great crack. Like, I genuinely, hand on heart, know that I'm good fun, right? And the arts, I was lucky enough to move to the art show, and it used to be called the Library because it was always quiet, and then I came along and it got re-nicknamed Comedy Corner because we were belly laughing 24/7. It was great crack. So because I can't read writing, I was really panicked about being placed on the arts programme. I actually asked to go to the John Toll show, and what was really interesting was all the group that we were in had all pre-discussed where we wanted to go, so nobody said overlapped, so that everybody would get their own thing. And I had said John Toll, and everybody thought, I'd just be perfect for that because it was Saturday morning, and I had all these ideas that we could do for coming up to Christmas and stuff like that there. And this one girl had talked about sport the whole time. And she said that she was doing sport. And at the last minute, and when it came to her, she said, I want to do the John Toll show. So he ticked off John Toll for her and blah, blah, blah. And then and everybody in the room was like, what has she just said? And then I was like, oh, I kind of wanted to do the John Toll show. And they were like, well, is there anything else that you want to do? Because it's already been picked. And I was like, oh. So he's like, well, I'll ring around. So the guy put me onto the arts programme, and I was like, this is going to be a disaster because I've never read a book. I'm not educated. These people are going to have degrees coming out of their ears. I can do light entertainments. I can't do this. But one of my great things that I am able to do is, and it goes back to like this old vaudeville day, right? And it was like, if dancers didn't necessarily know the steps and they were in like all their big sequins and everything like that there, the choreographer would just say teeth and tits it. So you'd smile and shake and shimmy, right? And that's what I spent the first few months doing. Was I
That's a
smiled and
distraction,
shimmied,
obviously.
because I don't really know what's going on. I don't know who this person is. I don't know. So I would Google people whenever they were, and then I would like listen to like their biography and stuff like that. So I'd be able to like drop things in. And then eventually it got into like, they were an arts program, but they weren't a stuffy program. They were like, we want to be arts and culture and fun. So what is, so as a team, we became quite a very tight blended team, which was great. And actually, then it came for me to move half of my placement to the John Toole show, and they were like, "Look, we'd like him to stay," and I was like, "I'm happy to stay." And
Can you tell us a little bit about? You told me about the conversation that one of the producers had with you just after a show. Was it he mentioned?
Yeah.
You?
So we were in. So by this stage I'd been working on the art show about 4 or 5 years, and we'd had morning meetings and everything like that there, and I always still in the back of my head was like, God, I'm winging this like every day. But every day I went in, I'm a great believer in enjoy all of the moments of life that you're in, and every day that I walked without fail, that I walked in through those stone walls and looked up at the doors, and I was like, I work here. Like, this is so amazing. And I was like, if I don't always work here, every morning I walked in, I always was like, I work here right now, and that's something that I'll always have, because technically with my background and my schooling and my education, I shouldn't have been in there, not that I shouldn't have, but like on paper, I shouldn't be in those doors. And here I am coming in here every single day, and still in the back of my head is going, but it's not going to last. Like, someone's going to catch on. It's not going to last. I'll get caught out. And I was coming into, I think, 4 or 5 years, and we were in this morning meeting, and the guy was like, well, and we'll do this, and you do that, and you do that, and you work on that. And then I want to, can I have a wee coffee with you this afternoon, Marcus? And I was like, this is it. And I was like, ah. And then we sort of went back to our tables and things like that. And I was like, can we just have this coffee now? I'll not be able to cope to lunchtime or to after lunch. And he was like, yeah, sure, no worries. And we went into this wee side room, and he said, well, tell me, how do you think it's all going, and how are you enjoying it and all? And I was like, great. And then I actually said, look, heads up, it's been a great run. I've loved it. I've really enjoyed my time here. So if you're sacking me, or you're letting me go, or you found somebody better, that's fine, because I can't even believe I've made it to this point. And he was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, is that not what you're doing? And he was like, no. I said, I've brought you in here to see how you're liking it, and we might need you because there was a slight shift. Somebody was moving to another department, and someone else had been upgraded. And he goes, want you to maybe do a bit more producing. And I was like, I actually thought you were bringing me in here to get. I said, yeah, that's fine. And he goes, oh, would you be up for it? I was like, that's great. I just thought you were getting rid of me. And I was going to say, and he goes, why on earth would we get rid of you? You're great. And then that's the thing. Although in the back of my head, I know that I can do what I can do, and I do it well, and I do everything to the very best of my ability. Now I don't suffer from it as much as in myself, because I know enough of how I deliver and the standard and the heights of what I deliver. That back then I was still going, I'm still competing with everybody else, because they are clever and they are knowledgeable and they know how this all works. And I never thought, well, so do you. That's why you work here. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. I always enjoyed, and I was going, I'll stick this out until they literally give me the boot, and that was grand, but I never thought that at one point that I should have been there. I kind of felt always in the back of my head, well, you're only here lucky, you're only here because they're stuck, that was it. Whereas now I look back and I go, well, it was a really blended team, and we worked really successfully together, and the art show went from being like a serious arts program to winning like entertainment awards and stuff like that there.
Do you think there's something in that? I mean, I'm probably going to entirely misquote it, and I may be even misrepresent it, but I mean, I think it was an Oscar Wilde one. He said that the trouble with youth is the trouble with youth is it's wasted on the young.
Yeah, completely.
Do you think there's an element of, the more miles you have on the clock, the more comfortable you just get with the fact that you don't need to have all the answers. You just need to be confident in your own ability and confident in your own skin, yes, and know what you can do, and be honest enough to say when you don't know what you're doing.
And it's the key thing is just what you've said there, which is amazing, is that if you don't know, it's okay to say, look, I maybe didn't quite pick up on what you were saying there, or I don't 100% get that. It's when people go away to a desk and they've had a team meeting or a briefing or something like that there, and they go, yeah, and they're like, I don't know what was going on, and then the work suffers. Whereas most people will turn around and go, you know, if you say, I didn't quite know what you meant there, but I didn't want to, you were on a roll, so I didn't want to like interrupt you. What did you actually mean by that? And then they go, oh yeah, it's this or this, or you've asked me to do this. It's been 6 or 7 months from I've done that. Can you just remind me how you do X, Y, or Z? And most people will go, yeah, that's fine. And nobody will give that a second thought, but people will look at bad work rather than you asking for help. Because if you're constantly not asking for it because you don't want people to think that you don't know what you're doing, and then you deliver a bad result, then that's going to feed into your anxiety and your paranoia that you shouldn't be there.
Is a lot of that about getting over that idea that asking for help is a sign of weakness?
Yeah.
Whenever you, particularly, you know, if we're thinking about people whenever they go into their first jobs, you know, they've been on the education. Somebody described it. One of our previous guests described it as, you know, you're on the education treadmill for 18 years or whatever it might be, and then suddenly you get off it, and nobody's told you what happens next.
Yeah.
And you have to try and figure it out yourself. And because people who have gone through the education and maybe done A levels and then gone and done degrees and masters of qualifications or whatever, you know, have been on this driven path, but it has a clear destination.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, you're in a place where the end destination just isn't as visible anymore.
Well, prime example of that was the girl who had done the degree in journalism and the masters in media studies, and that was it. Whereas I didn't have any of that, and I had to work out how to connect with people. And that's the thing. If you can connect and make things work, it doesn't matter what the background is. Again, unless you're like a brain surgeon, or you need to literally know how to like operate in a cornea or something like that. There, I'm never gonna. I don't think there's a YouTube tutorial I could wing how to operate in something.
YouTube tutorial for most things.
And that's the thing. So she had put all of her eggs in the education basket, but had no. Once she came out of that, then what do I do? What is the real life world? Whereas I was volunteering in places, and I did hospital radio, and I did a wee volunteer thing here and a volunteer just to get experience in how the whole thing worked, so that I had an understanding. And then in the early days, I did like an American YouTube type thing in the very early days of YouTube and stuff like that. So I had a grasp of stuff that was going on, but she didn't, because she only had her academia. Okay. So there's a lot to be said for if you in the ability of being able to wing it, but winging it to a point where you know that eventually you'll figure it out.
Yes.
Because while I'm teeth and tits and over here and being fun and going, having lots and having everybody in laughing and
just
buying
by
coffees.
the way, can I just say, since we had the conversation up in the Lamppost Cafe last week, and you told me about the vaudeville teeth and tits thing, I must have mentioned that to about 15. I think it's just a brilliant description of whenever there's something going wrong somewhere, distract them with something else. You know? And I think we all do it
completely.
We all just don't know we're doing it.
And what was interesting about that was that gave me enough time to be able to back up the goods. So I was like, yes, I'll do this, I'll do the other. So I didn't mind going in a wee bit earlier. I didn't mind staying a wee bit later. I was single. I lived in the city. It didn't really make it that much odds. But it meant that if you're prepared to put the work in, you'll get everything out. And if you're prepared to communicate with people and go like, I don't really know how this works. Could you show me? Or look discreetly. What was he actually talking about? I don't know what that means. And getting allyship around you. So I was always treading water a wee bit in my own head, but thinking I've got this and I can get through it. But always in the back of my head is going, I will get caught out. Yeah. The big shift, the biggest shift for me in that, like, basically I am enough, and that that's the one thing that I would love as a takeaway for anybody out there is, the individual person makes it by themselves. They'll have allies and people that will work with them and help them, but you are the driver. You're the master of your own destiny, and you need to spot: am I in the right place? Am I doing the right thing? If you're in a position and you're desperately trying to get forward, and for some reason you're always being overlooked, or every time you go, maybe at that point you're not the right fit.
Yeah.
you might not be what they're looking for, so you'll continually be looked over, or you'll go for another promotion and you don't get it. But for some reason you think, well, I've got this great job, maybe I should stay, maybe I should just be grateful that I've got it.
Yeah.
Whereas you kind of change the script a wee bit.
Well, that's my own experience, Marcus. As I said, it's 5 years this June actually since we started Blue Sky, and I was in a great job working for a great company before, and loved every part of it. Towards the end, I felt I was being overlooked potentially for opportunities that I thought I deserved. People who I worked for maybe will disagree with me, but I felt I deserved them. And the point where I made the decision to leave and remove myself from that environment was when I noticed the impact it was having on my own confidence about my ability and about the job that I was doing, because I was associating the fact that I wasn't getting the opportunities that I thought the work that I was doing deserved with the fact that, well, there must be something wrong with the work I'm doing that I can't see, and if I can't see it, there must be something wrong with me. But as soon as those feelings started coming in, I made the decision then, this is not the right place for me anymore. It was for 95% of the time that I was there, but it was that last 5% when I realized I'm not in the right place. Because I could start to see the impact that it has to you. So it is the environment that you're in and the people that are surrounding you important then in overcoming those feelings?
They either make or break you. If you have self-doubt at all, and you're working in an environment where people are constantly going, well, that's not right, oh, that's not right, oh, that's not right, but you literally move departments, or you move, to somewhere else, and then they go, oh my God, did you do that but yet the same work that you produced somewhere else, they're going, oh God, no. And then, so where your environment is, if you think about it, you spend so much time of your life in work, and there have been many jobs that I've had over the years, and there was one job that I had, and it was a drag job that I had, but I got to the point where, and I didn't have any other work and I didn't have anything else, but I was arriving to it, and I was like, I couldn't go any further. I wasn't getting any other work. There wasn't getting any other nights. I wasn't getting anything else. It was a horrible environment to the point where I was like, I'm out of here. You know what I mean? Like and I'm not progressed anymore. I'm not going to progress. I'm only annoying myself. So there was a moment for me when I had organised, I do a lot of like leadership retreats, and I have worked, lucky enough, touch wood or plastic, to now, because what people see a lot in me, and they like what I'm delivering, and they like what I'm hearing. And again, it's that thing of, because I don't have academia, I have people. So I know, basically, I can read between lines, and when somebody's saying one thing, I can figure out that they're saying something else, or help them to get to a place where going, well, have you ever thought of it like this? 90% of the work that I do, at some point, somebody will go, oh, I never thought of that. And you literally see this entire weight lift off them, because they've only seen one scenario, whereas I have to at any one time think, right, okay, what's my best option? You know what I mean? What's the best out of 5 I can create here? So I had organised this, and it was a big global CEO leadership event, and it was not invite only thing, but it was a very exclusive event, and it was peer-to-peer sort of alumni type thing. And I had got people from America and from Europe, and some from England, and a couple from the South. And the guy that was taking it, I'd got this American guy over, and he was taking it. And I'd got everybody in, and they'd all been to see my show the night before, and I'd organised everything, and we'd all had lunch. And then I made sure everybody was in the room and all was going. And at that point, because they were so, they had these amazing jobs, I thought, I shouldn't really be in this room. It's fine to set it up, but I shouldn't really be in the room, because I'm not as clever as these people. And then as I was about to leave, the guy leading it said, "Aren't you're staying, aren't you?" And I was like, yes, of course I am. I said, just run up there to get my notebook. And I ran up to the staff in the kitchen, and I was like, fuck, they want me to go down. They want me to stay in. What am I going to contribute to this? And they were like, you'll be fine. Just, So it was the type of retreat where, you have to do things, and they ask for volunteer. Everybody had to do everything that was being asked of. Everybody had to do it at one point. in my head, I was like, I will sit with such riddled with anxiety at this thing and watching other people do their thing. I'm going to volunteer first. So I always was like, I'll go first. And then that way I'm not comparing myself to anybody else. So I did that. And then we had 3 days of this. And then I could see them all, and I was listening to their stories, and their stories were exactly the same as mine, and they felt the same way that I did. And because one of the big places that needs the most amount of work in sort of public and private sector are sort of lower to middle management, because they're winging it so much, and they've got moved into positions that they don't know, and they're nervous about what way they're going left and right. So that's where there's a lot of struggle, or they get a little bit of power and they haven't before, and then they ruin it. And you know, the higher up then that you go, because you've got all the clackers below, the ones at the top don't have allyship, because they're going, well, if I show weakness here, you know, down my line, somebody's going to come in and take over. It's almost like, you know, the alpha male, I can't show weakness. Yeah. So that's almost what this retreat was about. It was all the top notches in their jobs, and they were all assisting each other. And I was going, well, you do that job, and like I could have figured that out, and you do that job, and like, Jesus, I could have figured that out. You do that job, and 2 or 3 of them that I personally coached while I was there and helped them, and they were like, this has been the most amazing experience. So I came out of that going, this is amazing. Not amazing, but going, I'm enough. Mm-hmm. Like me as an individual human being who has always thought it's okay for me to get other people to this point, and I'll organize this, or I'll do that, or I'll get this, and at some point I'll get caught on. Yes. And then the penny dropped. I am actually, I'm enough, and I should be doing the things that I'm doing. And then all of a sudden there was a shift in me, and I went, my education doesn't matter. My education, it's the fact that I know how to work with people, and I can see problems, and I can preempt problems, and I can see if a team is really not gelling. I can work out why they're not gelling very quickly, and I can get them to gel. Like, for example, whenever I worked in cosmetics years and years ago, I was the manager of this count, and it was the second busiest count. It was this small, tiny little account in Boots in town. And they were lifting the same monetary value per head. So not monetary value for the counter, but for units per girls' heads, to Oxford Street in London. So that was their flagship. And then and nobody could figure out what it was. And they used to say, they had this running joke, and it was Benefit Cosmetics that I worked for. And there was the Benefit way of doing things, and then there's the Marcus way. So I never knew, and they didn't know, and we didn't quite figure out what the Marcus way was. But if you could do it the Marcus way, that's fine. So we'd like you to do this, but we'd rather you do the Marcus way. And then it wasn't until I got older, you know, like more experience, and sort of then going into work along this line, I go, well, what was it that I did? Mm-hmm. And it was very simple. I gave all the girls validation, and I seen who they were and what they were doing, and I was like, you know, we're all in this together. We've got targets to hit, and if you get in trouble, I get in trouble, and if we don't hit these targets, and you know, so I would always add a wee bit extra on the targets. So by Wednesday, Thursday, they'd made their targets anyway. And if any of them needed to go for hospital appointments or doctor's appointments, or sometimes somebody came in hungover, life happens. You know, I don't care. Like, you know, we've made our target. We were really successful. And, you know, if you need to go home a wee bit earlier, go home. Or if a girl, you know, was on her time of the month and she just needed a break, I don't care. Go and have it. But that meant, because they were so well looked after, they would go, when they were working, they worked so much harder. And it's interesting that when I go into teams that are struggling, there's usually, that's what it comes down to. There's no validation within the team. People are working day and night, and somebody's just taking it and going, thanks. Or somebody's deliberately not taking on board what somebody else is saying, and they're maybe focusing in towards their friends. Mm-hmm. Or you just sometimes get people who may have been overlooked for 2 or 3 different jobs, and then they just make trouble for everybody else because they can. Okay. So it's very quickly, when you hear the stories of what everyone's saying, you can go, I get this. So this is where we do, this is how we tweak with this person, this is how we do, and then all of a sudden they're all in tune and they're all singing, and it's like a symphony. Yeah, okay. You know?
I mean, I wanna circle back a wee bit and talk about the Lady Portia thing a little bit more. I mean, I vaguely remember, again, it was a long time ago, I did A-level theatre studies and then did it briefly when I was at university, and there was always talk that, I think it was Stanislavski or somebody, maybe, I can't remember who it was, but there was some famous theatre person at some point in time had talked about this concept of, whenever you're wearing a mask, it's far easier to perform because nobody knows who you really are.
Yeah.
And once you take the mask off, you could walk past them 5 minutes later and nobody would know it's you. Was that anything to do with
that was
what
not
you
at
were
all.
doing with Lady P?
With Lady P, because I had no education and I struggled to read, write and spell, and I was like, I need to make money. I just need to make money.
Okay.
Here is something that I don't need to be able to read. I don't need to be able to spell. I can learn songs to lip sync, and I can dance on the stage, and I can talk on a microphone.
Yeah.
So
I've seen you in person.
That's how that all came about.
Okay.
And that's also why things like my Instagram and stuff like that is Lady P and me, because I do equally as much as myself as I do in drag. And for example, this Sunday I'm starting a new role where I'm not in drag, but I'm comparing a drag show, and I'm doing the sound and I'm getting all the acts on and off stage but as myself.
Yeah.
So it's something that I've never done that before. And another great thing that I'd love people just to sort of let this sink in with them, be comfortable at not being comfortable.
Yes.
Because when we coast, we don't really need to think outside the box. We don't have to try too hard. We don't have to figure what really is going on. And all of a sudden you become complacent. And complacency, then all of a sudden you're into inertia. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm so bored of this
Somebody
job.
said, there's an expression I think I've used far too often probably, which is like, nothing good ever happens in the comfort zone.
No. And once you step out of that, and why we stay in the comfort zone as well is our brains are so hardwired to keeping us in a state of safety.
Yeah.
Safety means that if you know the circle line in London, it's the yellow one that just goes round and round and round.
Yeah.
Our brain purposely keeps us on the circuit line because it's safe. And then we try to break out of that, and it goes, no, we need to get you back here. So that's why you can't, it's so difficult to slim. It's so difficult to give up smoking. It's so difficult to do anything. And our brains are always hardwired to keep us going one way. So if you can work against that and go, no, I do want to have a bit of a change, or am I still of value here? Yeah. Would I be better being somewhere else where maybe they're more on my page, and then look around and go, well, are your ideas, this is a great sort of tester, are the ideas that you're putting forward always being rejected, even though that that they're great, and then you see them appear somewhere else by somebody else? Once things like that start happening, then it's not them, it's you're in the wrong place. You're never going to be the right fit for the wrong company. You're never going to be the right partner for the wrong person. You haven't necessarily needed to change who you are. You just need to change the company that you're in or the partner that you're with. And then everything that what X didn't like or boss didn't like, somebody else is going to love, and you're going to thrive. So then if you're in a scenario where everything's not right, or this isn't going wrong, you're also feeding that into your own sort of energy vibration. So you're putting that out and going, well, I can't do this, and they're right, I shouldn't be doing this, I shouldn't be here, and I'm lucky to have a job if I don't lose this out. And whereas take all of that out and you move to an environment where I love that idea. That is brilliant. Did you come up with that by yourself, or you're somebody that's going, I love the fact that it takes you 20 minutes to order on a menu. I actually think it's really hilarious, even though that you always order the same thing. Whereas with somebody else, it'd been like that was like a deal breaker, where somebody finds that cute. So go where you are appreciated, not tolerated. That's the key thing. Yeah, okay. And also, you are the driving force. So don't stay somewhere because it's safe, and don't stay somewhere because you're lucky to have a job. That's what a lot of people will stay 30 years in a job and have never progressed because, well, I'm lucky to have a job.
From that perspective, do you think it's important then that people develop a sort of like that coaching program you talked about, a sort of peer-to-peer network, where people might not feel they're able to articulate in the place that they work that they maybe are struggling with something, because it perceived as a sign of weakness, or they're not going to get the promotion that they're after. Whereas if they can build a network of other people at the same sort of level that they're at, that helps, gives them a forum to have those sort of informal therapy. I feel like, those conversations that you think are very personal to you, but ultimately when you go and speak to somebody else, they're like, oh, I feel like that every day as well.
There's a great thing that you can do is, like you'll have allies in work and you'll have people that you can talk to. And if they're sort of saying, I kind of think maybe, he was right, and you were really way off with that, and if that keeps coming up and you've got someone who is on your side going, that's that thing where maybe I'm in the wrong, maybe I'm in the wrong place. But when you're going peer to peer, and that works for junior levels, to going, so I'm just new into this company, right? I've just started in this company and it's been my dream company to get into, and I love John in here, and I love what Sylvia's doing here, and I love what this person's doing here. Speak to them like, what was your job? So my background is so checkered to get to where I'm at now that people actually are a bit like, is this fella for real? You know what I mean? Like, I'm organising a surprise party for myself at the end of this month, but I'm in so many different, I've had so many different like walks of life, which has actually added to everything. So for example, when I used to work in special needs, fast forward 20 years and I do the first drag queen storytelling in all of Ireland, and I'm in a library in full drag to read to kids, but automatically I knew to get in, and I went straight onto my hands and knees, and I was at the height level of the children, because otherwise I would be too intimidating to them in the big shoes and the big hair and something that they'd never seen. So all the different walks of your life all brings you to every point that you're at. So you go, am I content and happy here? Or do I go, what is the next step? And then when you speak to somebody, so say I would have loved to have been running Blue Skies, and I'd be like, well, what did you do to get this? What was your role? Or, did you do courses, or did you do something? And just
again, asking those questions is really important, I think, because like most people, I think I find sometimes, I do a bit of work with young enterprise, and I find sometimes when you're talking to young people particularly, they can put themselves under too much pressure that they have to have all their shit together by the time they're 15 or 16, and they have the path plotted. Yeah. Okay? And I haven't met anybody, very few people, whose career is a linear path. Whenever you ask the question, you very often get, there was a complete left turn here, and then there was a crossroads, and I had a decision to make, and I made this one. I don't know what would have happened if I made the other one, but I've ended up where I am, and I quite like where I am. I think that can give people a lot of confidence, can't it? So I don't have to get off the education treadmill after 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, whatever it is, and have the next 20 years mapped out. It's like, no, people ask me, is this the forever job? And and it surprises people sometimes when I say, I don't know. It feels like the right thing to do now. Yeah. If it doesn't feel like the right thing to do at any point in time, it won't be the thing that I do.
And what's interesting in my experience of working in companies where people have had a complete linear path, they went in it here and they're now here, and it's usually about a 18 to 25 year thing. Mm-hmm. The teams underneath them tend to be the teams that are the unhappiest. The teams under people who have gone left, right, clean toilets, done this, done the other, they get it. They get the stress that people are under. Whereas when people glide to the top and haven't really had to, you've been here for 4 years, right? Okay, you're junior manager. You've done that for 5 years, right? You're a senior manager. You've done this for 5 years, right? Okay,
it's time served rather than actually.
John's just croaked it, so there you are. You can take over. Okay, you now run the company, and then they're like, well, I've never really had to work for it, so they don't get it. So they don't get the pressures that maybe younger ones are under, and especially in the day and age that we are living in now, where everything is cutthroat. There's 50 million different people to do 50 million different jobs, and at any one job application form, it is there's 50 people for one job or 200 people for one job. Okay. What is going to set you aside is you, and that's it. So all they want to know, all the bosses want to know is, yes, you probably have the same qualifications as everybody else. That's why you've got the interview. But why are they hiring you as opposed to anybody else? Okay. And there's some great questions that you can, when they always go, do you have any questions at the end? If you say at the end, well, yes, if I'm successful in this, what does a successful candidate look like? What does somebody who works well within your company, what does that look like? And what would you like to see from me if I got this job?
Mm-hmm.
And then they go, oh, Jesus, this person's really thought about it. Well, you know, somebody that works well in here, they do this, this, and this, and somebody. So then those are questions that people will remember and go, do you remember that fella that asked us, like, what, you know, and, you know, you might have had it in the bag because you've got the personality, but it's things that set you aside from everybody else.
Yeah, I had this conversation actually not too long ago actually about, you know, I recruited quite a lot of people in previous jobs and in this job as well. And looking back on it, I was talking to somebody about it, and it just occurred to me that most of the people that I'd actually employed who had been successful in that job application process are the ones that actually interviewed me.
Yeah.
At the end of the interview, you know, and did precisely that.
Yeah.
Said to me, you know, what would you expect me to achieve within the first 100 days of me being here? Mm-hmm. You're thinking, okay, right.
Yeah.
Now we've got somebody who's thinking ahead, who's being proactive, who's obviously wanting to know what results you want them to deliver, is trying to work out if they're going to be a good fit. And all of that just plays to whether it's a good cultural fit in the organisation.
And also a thing around that as well is that, you know, people can get into their own heads about why they didn't get the job, that they weren't good enough. But sometimes you're not what they're looking for.
Yes.
So the best example of this is, you know, if, you know, an actor is going for a job and the script says that this person has dark hair and a muscular physique and 6'4", and somebody comes along who is an amazing actor, like Shakespearean award-winning actor, comes in and 3 Oscars, but he's 4'4" and blonde hair and bald, and then all of a sudden they go for this and they're like, you didn't get the job. Well, that doesn't diminish how amazing this person is. So it's the same thing in certain jobs. They're looking for something that you don't have, or that you weren't the fit. Everything else could have been fine. It's just you weren't what they were looking for. It's not that you did anything wrong or you did anything bad or you did a bad interview. It's just for this role, that's not what they were, and that's fine, you know, because there will be something else that you'll be good for.
Okay, I'm just conscious of time, Marcus. So just wrapping up, could you tell us, if you were to give anybody watching this tonight who is struggling with imposter syndrome, 2 or 3 tips that you would give them that they can go away and have a think about, or things they can do, or tools or techniques they can use to try and get themselves over it? Yeah.
So firstly, in any scenario when people are feeling nervous or under pressure or anything like that, is to try to get as much oxygen into your body as possible. Okay. So breathing is a really important thing, because we can start to, like, you could sit at a desk and not be moving and hyperventilating. So if you're in that type of a thing, there's a great technique that you can do where you do like 2 big breaths in through the nose, and you go, and then 1 extended out. And what that does is that opens up all of the oxygen vessels. It gets it in, and then you're getting it in and out, and that literally recalibrates your system. Second of all is look around and go, I may be in job X, and that was to everybody else, this is great. Am I a fit? Am I a square peg trying to force myself into a round hole? And if I went to somewhere else, would I do better? And if that is the case, be honest with yourself, because sometimes there, as what I was saying in middle management, people can say things like, oh, far too many ideas, because what's happening is when people are in complacency and they are stuck in that place, anybody else new that comes in, they're like, well, fuck, look at them and all their ideas. I don't want them to show me up, right? Yeah. So you also have to be aware that sometimes there are forces that are holding you back because they don't want to see you do better. And then you have to go, am I the right fit for this job? Always trust your intuition. That has got me through everything, because I don't have the brains, but I've got the gut where it goes. Well, when I mean academia, so obviously I know I've got a great brain. Okay, it's an odd. Like, I'd hate to see my brain. Like, God help anyone that ever dissects my brain. They'd be like, this person lived to what age? Are you sure? Could they tie their own laces? Whereas your intuition is designed to actually know, are you making the right decision? And if there's something in you that goes, I'm in the right place, I'm in the right time, I just need to ride this out, or you go, that my guts just tell me I'm not in the right place. And also one of my top tips is, you probably have the same gumption and the same knowledge and the same everything that's going on as bosses above you, and you probably have the same amount your shit together more than sometimes they do, because you're only working on 1 or 2 projects. They're overseeing several, so their eyes aren't always on the ball. So sometimes in the room you could be the smartest, you could be the one that actually has it nailed, and stay calm and don't be afraid to say, what about this, or what about that, or if you were, because especially working in live radio or working live on stage, if something's going up, if I took a step back and there was maybe something not working on the system over here, well, I don't need to go, that's not working. I just go and do it. So don't ask permission to help and be useful, you know.
Okay, that's great, Marcus. Really appreciate it. I really enjoyed that chat.
Great.
Hopefully everybody that tuned in felt the same. So that's us wrapped up for now. I just want to fill you in with a few details of what we've got coming up next. So on the 23rd of March at 1 p.m, we're starting a new lunchtime learning series where we have Simon Harper, who's a MailChimp partner, coming to us to demystify email marketing and hopefully make it a little bit easier for everybody. And then we're focusing on purpose-driven marketing the following day, actually, on the 24th of March, where we've got Tim Monroe from Smiley Monroe in Lisburn and Gillian McKee, who is a sustainability consultant, coming to talk to us about purpose-driven marketing and how consumers' buying habits have changed and how we try and knit that into our marketing strategies. And then we've got plenty more coming up. Have a look at the Future Marketing page on LinkedIn for details of the sessions that we've got coming up until June. So once again, thanks very much, Marcus, for joining us tonight. I hope everybody enjoyed that, and we'll hopefully see you again at the next session in March.
Take care.